Hey guys, First of all, Comic Book University and The Punisher, The Platoon, issue number 2 of 6. This is a wicked, wicked book, guys, I'm telling you. So basically, we start off with the reporter asking the guys about the Kisan offensive, basically a part of the Tet offensive. Now, what happens here is they get the wind, that particular platoon, they get wind of, hey, there's going to be, there's potentially going to be a problem. Some people are talking, we stumbled upon something, a whole bunch of different things that led to, crap. So anyway, the Punisher's platoon, this is, mind you, he called in an airstrike on his very first day, out in the bush, which was, for them, it's like, okay, this guy's got moxie. This guy's awesome. We kind of like him, but they don't know what he's like in battle. They're about to find out. So Frank Castle, at the time, he's Francis Castiglione. For more on that, guys, check out the Punisher Explained in a Minute on Comic Book University, description and the link below. I actually didn't expect to make that. I don't know what came over me the one day. I was just like, you know what? Let's just make this one easy and let's just talk about the Punisher. So yeah, really good one. Really proud of that one too. Punisher Explained in a Minute. Anyway, so we see that when the battle actually starts, they've got a good spread, like 10 meters apart and whatnot. The reason why they do 10 meters apart is because in case somebody throws a grenade, the kill radius of a hand grenade on average is, 5 meters. So anything within 5 meters of that grenade, you've got no chance of survival. You know what I'm saying? Regardless of all the silly little things like, oh, if you lay down right next to it, then you're fine. Yeah, I want you to actually think if that really makes sense, and then laugh every time you see something like that on the internet. Anyway, so what you have is the Viet Cong. They invade and they're coming in droves, and they're talking about how we dropped 100 before they even got to the first wire. So it's crazy, like the detail and the descriptions. But more than that, what Garth Ennis gets in this, and he conveys it perfectly, in my opinion, absolutely perfectly, is both sides of the story. He talks about how the Viet Cong, the last of the NVA officers, he was actually able to come over to the States a few times, and he's able to forgive and forget in many ways. And he was a brilliant leader, and he led like you'd imagine an Asian general who's read The Art of War, Sun Tzu, many times. You know what I'm saying? Has memorized it. Like preachers memorize the lines that help them out in the Bible. You know what I'm saying? Like, wow. So this guy who is able to lead without you necessarily realizing he's the leader and not wanting to take credit, he also gives credit to the Americans. He gives a good story where even the soldiers, the American soldiers, those 4 who were being interviewed, are like, wow, what's going on here? So when they talk about the LT, meaning the lieutenant, Frank Castle, eventually he'll get to that name, 2 more tours, he... once the battle actually began, he's just standing there, he's firing, he's doing his own part and whatnot. But at one point, they talk about how they had to fix bayonets. The soldiers were getting way too close. And the one thing you never, ever want to hear somebody say is fix bayonets. Meaning put your knives on the end of your rifles and go out there and start getting stabby with people. Nobody wants to hear it because that's dangerous, man. Like, this isn't Sparta. You know what I'm saying? Like, and this is the most uncivilized. You can't come out of that clean. There's no way to come out of something like that clean. So, wow. Getting into this was wicked. These guys, like, Garth Ennis wasted no time in showing how dirty combat could be. I mean, like, you really get, if you're reading this comic, you know how graphic this got. Like, just remember, there's the Max imprint on the very front of this. So, this is like Punisher Max Part 2, basically, the prequel. So, when somebody comes, when the mortar hits, it actually strikes at the 50 cal. So, the 50 caliber machine gun, that's like the main cutting down. Like Geneva Conventions, you're not actually allowed to shoot that at people, not civilians. You're not supposed to shoot at civilians, period, but at human beings. So even other soldiers, you're not allowed to do that. A 50 cal is supposed to be reserved for equipment. I don't actually know if if the Geneva Convention existed with that particular rule in it back in the days of Vietnam. I don't actually know if that was a part of the rules there. But today, that's absolutely one of the rules. You can shoot at a tank. You can shoot at a truck. You cannot shoot it you cannot actually target an individual who's, even if he's running at you. You're not supposed to do that. That's actually considered an egregious act. So you can actually be charged with a war crime for something like that. Anyway, so yeah, this gets so sick, so deep. The Punisher has to go back and stop these Viet Cong from taking this sandbag pit that has the Browning, the 50 cal in it. They call it the Ma Deuce. That's the name of this chapter. The nickname for the 50 caliber machine gun is Ma Deuce. So whoever owns that, like, you forget about it. And you see the damage that he does with it. And he actually shoots people dead in the face with it. And when push comes to shove, it's kind of hard to sit there and say, oh, well, he deserves a war crime on it. Look, I get it. And if you actually been in combat, you understand. It doesn't need to be said. It's understood. If you haven't been in combat, it's all just speculation, and you might as well be talking about physics when you haven't even finished a college degree. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, this was actually a really deep, wow, really like finger poking kind of book. I don't even feel comfortable necessarily giving it a grade, but I'm just going to give it an A+. Because, wow, like this one just speaks. This one speaks. Guys, just to throw in a couple like I did last time, just a couple of quick things in here that maybe some people who don't know that much about the military need to understand. Air and arty. When that's talked about, air and arty, it just means fire, artillery fire. So the arty is artillery, air is artillery from the air, basically. When you drop bombs or get a gunship in from the air, that's what that means. Artillery is the tanks, like the I don't actually even know what would have been used way back in Vietnam. I wasn't in Vietnam, but sorry, I'm not quite that old yet. Never be that old. Anyway, what do you call it? The howitzer and things like that is what we would have used today. So, yeah, calling it artillery. That's what that is. Butter bar. Somebody actually says butter bar at one point. Cool. This is a second lieutenant. The lowest rank you could be as an officer is a second lieutenant. That's a golden bar. So they call that the rank looks like it's gold and it's long. It's a rectangular gold, what do you call it, piece of rank. That's what it is. So they call a butter bar. The first lieutenant, which is higher than a second lieutenant, is the exact same thing, but it's silver. And then after that is captain. That's what Frank Castle eventually, that seems to be the standard that we go with for Frank Castle. There's always been different in canon, what rank he was. Was he an officer or not when he was in the military? A lot of times people have said, officers didn't get their hands into the mix that much. So, the idea of being an NCO would have been much more glorified in that regard, but not so with Frank Castle. So the standard today is that, yes, he was a captain. He got up to the rank of captain, which is 03. Gook KIA at one point. I haven't found myself saying something like that in a very, very long time. KIA obviously means killed in action. The word gook is actually a very derogatory term for an Asian. Maybe you know that, maybe you don't. I don't know. This was something that was used back in the day. I remember hearing it once, literally once in my entire life, aside from being in the military and hearing some of these old stories. And it was from a friend of mine who I didn't stay friends with after the first year and a half of knowing him. We used to actually go and lift weights together. And he just turns out that he's actually a really deep-seated racist. And I had no idea. Go figure, he became a cop. Okay, moving on. They talk about Gleed giggling at the 60s bumping at his shoulder, and he's feeding the belt. This guy was a 60 gunner. I was a 60 gunner. Here's the M60 gunner, and it's belt fed. You have to. It's a belt. The belt basically has 100 bullets on it. 7.62 millimeter shells, the exact same caliber that's used for an wrong nomenclature, for the AK-47, the Alexander Kalashnikov 1967. Yeah, that's actually what AK-47 means. It was actually made in 66, but Kalashnikov actually did a rework on it to improve it just a little bit. I believe it was actually jamming issues, which now there are no such thing as jamming issues in the with the AK-47. So it took a year to do that. So he re-released it from 66 in 67. So that's why it's called the AK-47. And one of the greatest inventions ever made. At the same time, also one of the most deadly. So, and I'm going by awards given. Yes, he actually got awards for that universally. So, just the idea of the 60 bumping against his shoulder, the M60, we used to call it the pig or the hog, or sometimes we call it the bitch. It's a big gun and it makes a lot of noise. That's the main purpose for it. But, you know, feeding the belt, there's a belt of 100 rounds on 100 rounds on the belt, basically, chain linked. And you would just link the chains together by clicking the extra link into the male piece into the female piece, basically. The other link onto the bullet that doesn't have a link on it. So boom, and you just keep on feeding the belt like that. And you'd have to try and hold the belt up as much as you can, because if it leaned too much, it could jam. If the bullets got dirty, it absolutely would jam. That's a big problem that the Americans had with the machine guns. The M16, A1, and A2, and the M60, they would I don't know about the saw. I don't know if that, I've seen it used, but I never actually had and I've held it, but I've never actually had the chance to actually fire it or anything like that. So whatever, I don't actually know if it jammed a lot. Somebody can let me know. Anyway, so this was basically just what do you call it? You got to see it in the comic also. The gun jammed. I think the Punisher's gun, if I remember I can't believe I just said gun. Anyways, his rifle, his weapon, his M16 jammed at one point. That was a constant problem. They were not made well. Plus, you also saw that it shattered. The buttstock shattered when he hit it across somebody's head. If you're strong enough, yes, it absolutely could happen because it's made out of plastic. The AK-47 is all metal and wood. It's very strong, very sturdy. It's built to last. You could drop it in water. You could drop it in mud. You could urinate on it, and it would still fire. No exaggeration. And it makes a very distinct noise when fired at you. That's an old saying. Anybody in the military will know that one. But the M16, yes, was made to be manufactured in mass quantities. So it was made out of light metals and plastic. So it was very light. It was easy to keep on toting, but there was constant maintenance required for it, constantly cleaning. I swear to God, we learned how to have ourselves blindfolded and still take apart and reassemble the M16. Because we'd have to know every single part of it intimately. And I wasn't even a 16 gunner. I wasn't a standard, whatever grunt. I was a 60 gunner. So I still had to learn the M16. It's mandatory. If the 60 goes down, guess what? I'm grabbing somebody's 16. Anyway, and then the Mob Deuce is the 50 cal. Anyway, that's pretty much it there. It was a very insane comic book. I was, wow. Yeah, I'm saying wow a lot for it because this was just so engrossing. It really was. I love this. I know this is a really long review. Deal with it or don't, whatever. But anyway, I'm just going to leave it there. And I guess I will see you for issue 3. And don't forget to check out Punisher Explained in a minute. Really good stuff. All right, guys. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.